All right, so today I'm going to be showing you all how we're going to find the perimeter of a rectangular shape when we only know the length or the width of one side. So we only know one side. So something to think about is we need to think, we can draw it out and we can also think, what do we know? Okay, so I'm going to draw a little model out right here. So one thing that we know is we know that it is 8 feet wide. Okay, so I am remodeling some restrooms for a company that I own, and I want to think about how many baseboards or how much baseboards I need. So one thing I know is my restrooms, they're 8 feet wide. Okay, I also know the area. So I'm going to put the area inside. I know that the area is 1,120 square feet. So what are some of the things that we don't know that we need to figure out? We need to figure out what is the length, okay? Another thing I want to think of is, what do I know? I need to think about my equations. So I know that area is equal to length times width. I also know that perimeter is equal to length plus width plus width. Okay. So now that I know those things, I need to think, well, how can I figure out my missing number? So I like to plug things in. All right. So we know the area. We know the area. We know the length, or we know the width. We do not know the length. Okay. I cannot figure out the perimeter because we don't know the perimeter. We don't know the length yet. So what I need to do is, they gave me the area. They gave me one of the sides. I know the width. I could be able to figure out basically what the length is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in those numbers. So I have 1,120 is equal to some number. So we're going to leave that number as L. Let's make it a capital L. And we multiplied that number by 8. So we're trying to figure out what this number is. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do inverse relationships to figure it out. So we want to get this L by itself. So we multiplied it by 8. We're going to divide by 8 on this side. Whatever I do on one side of my equal sign, I'm going to also do on the other side. So I'm going to divide by 8 here. So this is actually crossed out because they're inverse relations. So basically, if we had 8, we're dividing it by 8, we're left with nothing. We're left with 1, okay? So it's basically like we're saying we're left with nothing. So we need to get them by themselves. What we have is 1,120 divided by 8 is going to give us that L. So we're going to have to reach back into our knowledge on how we divide. So a lot of my students like to use partial quotient. So we have 8, and we're dividing it by 1,120. If you want detail on how we could do this, remember you can always look at another video, one of the previous videos that I have posted about how to divide using partial quotients. So the first thing that I want to do, I'm going to switch pens. I know that I'm going to not multiply. I need to figure out what number can I multiply by 8 that is going to get me close to 1. Now there shouldn't be a number that I can multiply by 8 to get me close to 1. So let's look at the first one. What number can I multiply by 8 that's going to get me close to 11? So I know I can multiply 1 by 8 to get me close to 11. That's going to give me 8. Okay. Now I need to think, what digits am I missing? So I'm missing 2 digits. 2 digits. Now you guys might be asking, well, why did you put the 8 here instead of here? So remember, this is 8 ones. And remember, if we're looking at this, we're just isolating these 2 numbers. This would be the tens place and the ones place. So if we put this here, that 8 there, that would technically be 8 tens. Okay. So keep that in mind. All right, so we're going to subtract. So we have 0 minus 0, we're left with 0. 2 minus 0 is 2. 1 minus 8 I cannot do, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow. That one's going to turn into an 11. 11 minus 8 is 3. So I'm left with 320. Now I'm going to ask myself again, what number can I multiply by 8 to get me close to 3? Can't do it, so we're going to take the first 2 digits instead. What number can I multiply by 8 to get me close to 32? Okay, so I know that 4 times 8, got to add those 2 zeros there. Remember, we had 2 zeros here that we added. We're going to add 2 zeros here as well, okay? So I know that 8 times 4 is 32. Let me think, how many digits am I missing? I'm missing 1 digit, so I'm going to add 1 0 here, 1 0 here. That tells me that 8 times 40 is equal to 320, okay? So now that I have that, I'm going to subtract 320 minus 320 is 0. Remember, going back, this is 140, okay? So now we just figured out what our L is, okay? So we can actually plug that in. So we had a W, we already knew. We had our A. We now know what our L is, which is 140. We can always go back and double check because we can multiply 140 by 8 and we should have 1,120. So now that we know our L, we can now figure out our perimeter. So we're going to just plug those numbers in. So our perimeter is equal to L plus L. So it's 140 plus 140 plus our width, which we were already given, 8 plus 8, okay? Let's do a little bit of mental math. We know that 140 plus 140 is 280. And then we know 8 plus 8 is equal to 16. We can add those two numbers up. We have 296. So now we know our perimeter, which is 296. We ask ourselves, 296 what? Is it 296 butterflies? Remember, perimeter is always going to be just the units. So it's 296 feet. So that restroom that I'm remodeling in the business, I'm going to need 296 feet of fencing or baseboard because remember, perimeter gives us the rim of something. So I'm going to need 296 feet.